Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of our Opus 16 Emissaries of Light set review. I am, of course, lucky to be joined by Mr. Eureka himself. Jared, how are you, sir?
I am good. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. You ready to dig into Earth, Lightning, and Water?
Let's go.
Heh, dig in. Okay, what I did there? Okay, so first we have Dark Knight. This is another 11 art card. This card's pretty fodder unless you have something to say. I'm just going to move past it.
Yeah, it is surprisingly playable compared to some of the other ones, but yeah, it's not a standout card by any means.
Pack fodder. Amber, another soiree member. We're almost there for all you soiree fans out there. We're almost getting close. Next, we have Heretical Knight Garland. Really love the artwork on this card. And this is one of those ones that, what did someone describe? I think maybe someone from YYT kind of described them as like enchantment cards, kind of from Magic, in that it's this card that kind of buffs another one. We saw that with like Luna Freya from Opus 15 last set. And so in theory, I can see a world where, because Garland can also protect himself, that he can just keep this forward at 4K Brave, which is pretty good. At the same time, I wonder if that's just too expensive. And we said this in the last set review, and maybe it's different now because of the bans, but back then we talked a lot about how, well, combat doesn't really matter. And like, does it matter now? Because if it doesn't matter, then a forward B in 4K Brave is irrelevant if they just get typhoned away, or, you know, they get removed. And that's another thing, like the Garland can get typhoned away, a very popular monster. So I would like to be wrong about this card because I think he looks cool, but I just don't see this making much of an impact.
I think this is the best time to talk about kind of a step. It seems like the development team has kind of taken a step away from what Earth has been recently, like over the past, I want to say like 8 sets, and has kind of returned to what Earth was like in the first like 5 sets. Yeah. So we saw a lot of that time in the middle when Earth was kind of this element about that became all about like multi-element stuff, and you know, recursion is probably the biggest one. It was something that was kind of limited to Earth as an element for quite a while. You know, first with Minor, and then with, you know, Larkishus and Puma. You know, stuff like that, and Kusith, and we're kind of coming to the point where, well, every element kind of needs to have its own recursion. And so I think they kind of, you know, maybe took a look and they said, well, what is, you know, Earth going to be again? And I think the answer that they came up with is big dudes, and this definitely fits into that image. Whether or not Heretical Knight Garland is good enough to see play by himself is kind of going to come down to like, well, how good is big dudes really? And this one seems okay. I think that the action, it's a lot of it is going to come down to like whether or not this action ability is usable or not, and it kind of seems like it's not going to be that good specifically because you have to dull him.
Yeah.
But if it is good, or you find a way to like counteract him being dulled, or, you know, whatever, then I do expect this card to be pretty playable actually. So I would expect to see none of it and be very pleasantly surprised that if Big Dudes works, this card is good among them.
Nice little trip down memory lane there, and kind of just exploring Earth as an element. I really appreciate that. And it actually ties into our first Earth legend here, is that, well, how good are big dudes really? Because we have Aerith here, and if you take away all the shenanigans of her re-raising and coming back stuff, if you just look at that first line of text, that's the actual impact she has on the game. Because everything else is just, yeah, revive and blah, blah, blah. But it's just, okay, it buffs everyone else around her by 2, which is not a bad effect by any means, especially because it's not restricted. But at the same time, again, how good is that really? And then her recursion effect is, obviously, she'll still be weak to things like Famfrit, or if she gets removed from the game via Susano or something like that. But, you know, she hits the bake zone, she comes back later. It's a neat idea, but again, that's 3 whole turns. I guess it depends what kind of game you're playing. If it's a slower game, maybe those 3 turns matter. If you're getting rushed down by stuff, you can't afford to wait 3 turns. So I'm not super high on this card, but if big dudes matter, maybe this one's better than I'm thinking it is.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly on the same page. This card has like a couple of niche, like, you know, combo uses with, you know, like Cloud Pod, sacrifice your Aerith, and the Aerith comes back later. So it's kind of like going to make this recurring value. But I mostly agree that like if big dudes matter, then Aerith looks maybe surprisingly playable. That being said, I don't really expect to see a ton of this card. One place I do expect to see it though is as maybe like a one of in Rydia decks. the Earth Water Radio cantrip deck, because specifically it buffs Sophie by 4K, just like Sarah Mobius does. It also makes your team big, and it's kind of sticky to remove, and that kind of seems like something that this deck might want to sign up for. It also seems okay in like monks, because it's a sticky forward and it makes all of your guys even bigger, just like Yang does. You really appreciate that. So I think we will see this card, but I don't really have an image for where it's coming in specifically or how good it's going to be when it gets there. I just do think that this card is kind of unique enough and has enough words on the card that it probably sees some play somewhere at some point.
We will see where our favorite flower girl lands. This next card, I'm curious to see if you feel any different, because the more I think about this card, the more I just kind of hate it. If summoners are ever relevant, there's better icos for summoners, and in a world of most of your 3 costs have to do something on entry. You want a tutor, you want something. This comes here, does nothing, and then if you want to pay an additional 3 later, it's indiscriminate. It doesn't hit just dull forwards like a lot of Earth stuff does. But if you think about that, you're basically paying 6 CP to blast something for 10k. I think that's way too expensive.
I think that this card would have been bad in Opus 1. So I don't know how we could possibly justify it. So
that's a great review. Next we have Cyran. This is kind of just pack fodder. His special is okay, but his is kind of just pack fodder.
Yeah, if there's a world, where it's kind of like if there's a Lena for Earth 2 CPs, then maybe there'd be something there. Or if there's a job named Monk, this card would have been awesome. Yeah, because you get it back with Ursula. But I think that this one it just doesn't line up quite correctly.
All right, for all you Shijin fans out there, we're finally going to talk about Kieran, getting our 2 Earth Legends out of the way right away. Of course, it's brave, can't become dull either, so it will torment all the Ice and Lightning players out there. It's going to buff your other Shijins by 1,000, your Genbu, Byakuyo, Suzako, and Siryu. And then, interesting, when he enters the field, you're going to reveal the top 5, and it specifically plays cost 4. And I'm sure, like a lot of people, we probably all just inherently thought, well, 4 or less, 4 or less. So I was like, no, it's 4 specifically. So, which all the Shijin are. And I won't lie, I definitely kind of want to build a deck around this. I think there's some kind of vanille that says, if you can guess what the next card coming up is, you get to break something. And so I kind of want to make just a pure 4-cost deck to be well, it's going to be a 4-cost. Then of course I'll hit Kieran and totally whiff. It seems like a neat card. I like the art. Definitely, I think this is going to be one of those, it could be fun to use. Probably not super competitive just because it's so specific, but could be fun. I guess it depends on how much you value the other Shijin and the combos they can do. And of course, those are all very similar. They can search each other out and then pay for elements if they're in the break zone, etc. So lay it on me, sir.
Okay, I think that the Shijins, they're awful. They're really, really bad. They have EX bursts to search for other ones, and they have their own effects, but none of them are particularly they're not particularly good on the resources they have, and only getting the plus 1k off of Karen's ability means that they just go to 4 CP 8k, which is not really where you want to be. So it doesn't seem like the Shijins with Kieran have any really cohesive game plan that makes them more interesting outside of it is a fun deck and something that you can do in title, which could be an interesting approach to it. But I don't think as a standard or an L6 deck, Shijins are really something that you should be getting excited about. However, I do think that Kieran by himself is just an incredible card. I don't know about best card in the set or anything. I don't think he's nearly as good as a lot of the win cards here, but we have gotten a lot of new 4-drop just good 4-cost forwards this set. Just erase the Shijin part of this card from your mind completely, and then think about playing an Ice Earth or something deck that plays this with Renoa, so you can blink it and do it again. Shantoto, the new Shantoto comes out of this too, so you get a card back when you do that, and we'll get to them in a bit. But I think that this card works really, really well with all of the Soiree members, and I want to play it in that deck.
Awesome. Jared's take their Shijin, throw them out of your head. We're playing with Kieran. Great points, sir.
Yeah, just
all right.
He's a Soiree member in disguise.
Yeah, right. we have the return of Stern Leonis. This is the gladiator. This is the 2-cost backup, and he's like Stern, except it's only for 1 turn and it's only on entry, so a lot more tame.
And damage 5. Yeah.
And then we have this Beastmaster, which again, there's always these cards that come out. They're like, well, if you're playing monsters, maybe you'll try this. Is this even as good as Larketius though? I can't remember.
No. Yeah. It's not quite as good as Larketius. There's like a small like niche. Maybe play this. Maybe it would be played in an L6 deck. Is what I expect. If there's like some monster L6 deck, because we do have some other monster support in the set, you could maybe play it there, but I don't think it's ever making the cut in standard.
And next we have an imposter card. This is Benjamin from Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, a game that is a very entertaining, lovely little game for the Super Nintendo, but it's Final Fantasy in name only. It really has nothing to do with the series. Fun little game nonetheless. I mean, his damage 5 ability is quite good. The fact they can just break any dull character, but again, are you slotting this in to wait till damage 5? Probably not. It's probably just a fun...
And
go ahead.
I think if this was like a damage 5 effect on like a 2-drop or like a 3-drop, then there would be some potential there. But on a 5-drop, it's just a little too pricey.
Yep. Sorry, bud. Get out of here. Cactar, this is the Earth version of this summon. This one actively hurts you if you don't pay the element. Some decks like that. Some people want to take damage, so maybe they see this as an advantage. How do you see Cactar?
I am definitely in that camp. I think I looked at this card and I was like, oh, so like they're penalizing like the multi-element stuff because you actually want to see 1 damage. And so, yeah, this card is all closer to your damage that in Earth, which you didn't really have a lot of options to take damage. Like, it's very hard to get like, damage 3 or whatever. But imagine, like you have this, your opponent is playing a normal game, and you're playing monks or whatever, and your opponent just doesn't hit you. They're like, well, I don't know, man. I don't really want to hit my opponent because then he'll be able to do something with Yang, and then you just make their forward damage and then play Yang next turn, right? I think this is just all upside. It's a 1-card answer to Tenzin that turns on Yang. I think this card is like total slam dunk. I think it's the perfect stat line to work with Rydia too. And the Rydia deck runs a lot of EX bursts, and you can use the EX burst when you do this. So yeah, I think this card is totally incredible. I expect to see a lot of it. It's very specific in what it does, but it is totally irreplaceable with other summons that do similar removal stuff. And yeah, I think it's awesome.
Big thumbs up from Jared. Yeah, good point. Oh, we're so close to the soiree members, Shinju, but just gotta wait just a little longer. Sophie, she's back. Well, not quite. This is a very different version of Sophie. This was one I had to think about. Deals damage to a 4 due to ability, double the damage instead. And then, of course, if you cast a 5-cost, makes me wonder if she can fit in with the wall. She must be designed with that because they're both from Mobius, same game. Man, but then, of course, she's not a 5-cost herself. I don't know. This is a tough one for me to evaluate because I could see a world where it's really potent, but I could also see like, it's just a little too much work to make it good. How do you feel about Sophie?
Yeah, I'm mostly of the same opinion. I think, it's very clear on the card. It's like, please play me with the new wolf. That's like what it says on it. You want to have a lot of 5-drops in your deck. And that kind of like forces you into like an Earth Wind, which, there are very good 5-drops in Wind. I have Bismarck, Cecil, the Wall, and everything. So I think there could be like an Earth Wind big guys deck, so to speak. Especially because, the wall gets cheaper when you cast when you have any 5-drops on field, and that deck does like to run Star Sibyl, which is kind of outdated, but also if it works with your other cards, then you might be more interested in playing that. It does also work with Ajito Marajito, Apururu, the new Shantoto, not the newest one, but the 5-drop backup Shantoto, it works with that too. So I could easily see there being like a Earth Wind big cost deck that isn't necessarily Versatile or isn't necessarily like Fusoya and stuff like that, but just big cost just because it works really well with Wall and because there's a high quality there. And I think Sophie could be a nice addition to that deck. Will it be like a powerhouse of that? Probably not, but it could be nice to have this kind of mid-range power threat that is kind of like a little dork on a card.
Interesting. See where she goes. Certainly, she won't live up to the heights of her previous card, but I mean, what could?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Next, we have Terra, who I think should be Job Esper, especially since she is in her Esper form here, not a Magic Tech Knight. Nonetheless, so I think this card would be amazing in title. As far as regular, I don't know, like, because usually the most common 6 decks are fire and ice. Doesn't mean you couldn't do other ones. You could try to throw wall, but usually earth isn't one of those. Of course, she fixes it as soon as she's on the field. She's just got to get on the field. She's got some cool abilities that are pretty cheap, where you can just freeze it back up, freeze it back up, freeze it back up. Freeze it forward. You can even use her effect to dull it and break it. But I don't know. I like, it's a neat card. I do like the idea of it and the design of it, but I'm struggling to see this one really come at you other than in title.
Yep, I think that the biggest problem with this card is just getting it onto the field, and that's kind of a deal breaker for this one. It's not for a lot of cards, but for this one in particular, I think it is. The only Earth 6 backup, as far as I know, is Kefka, and that card is like way past being playable, which means you're just gonna have to play like no Earth backups that Terra can use. And because of that, you're going to be forced into ice or into fire, maybe into water, I guess is the last option, but probably ice. And because that deck also has a limited number of backups, you have Setzer, Gasolian Emperor Sid, and then the other one is like Terra. It seems a little too hard to get this down on the field and have the 6 backups to really make it shine. But yeah, in title, seems absolutely incredible.
You bet. Next, we have the Demonolith monster. He's the Earth version of those Scry ones, so we'll move past him. Then we have Hades, who is our hero Earth monster, and probably, at least on first read, definitely seems like one of the weaker ones. Maybe you could put something in here for his attack effect, where you like lightly damage something with a Cactuar or something that can ping.
Yeah.
I do find his first effect to be kind of interesting in the situation that sometimes late game, you're just drawing backups and you've already got 5, so they're all just dead cards in your hand. So I do like the idea of like kind of swapping one out. You're not really a swap, but you discard it and then you can actually draw something hopefully more useful. It's fun to think of him with Robel Lackbell, that you could draw backups and then keep discarding him to draw, and then you keep drawing him back. So I think he'll be worth trying for that. Otherwise, he's probably not going to really hold up to some of the other ones, but I think he would be worth trying with Robel just to see what happens.
Yeah, I like this card in like a very specific deck, like because it's a realm target, you play realm and then get Hades plus Cactuar, and that's just like it's one card kind of sets up the whole combo for you. Now, like that being said, realm can make a lot of dreams come true, and is this really the most powerful one to be doing with the realm? Well, that's kind of debatable. That being said, he can be played out of realm, so there's kind of a limit to how bad he possibly could be. I will say that there is other, monster support in the set, with the Cactuar dealing damage to yourself to turn this online faster, with the Mira that we're going to talk about in a little bit that can get this back and other, Cactuar back. There is a lot of kind of convergence on this monster theme deck, and in the monster theme deck, this could be potentially very good. But do I really expect it to be like one of the premier strategies in the game? Well, probably not.
You nailed it. All right, it's finally time. We got Madame Edel. I don't actually know who these characters are, but now we're going to talk about all those Job Morse's soiree member. Hopefully I said that correctly. She is, of course, the big thing that holds it all together. She is going to protect all of them from summons or abilities, so they can't. Not only can they not just be broken outright, they can't take any damage from them. So like, good gravy. And then when she enters the field, she just takes your favorite one in the break zone, plays it right on there. There's so many of these cards across so many elements. Some people have mentioned they kind of see these as like Mannequins 2.0 because they've got one that color fixes across all the elements. And just to be honest with the viewers, because there's so many effects and there's so many elements, I don't really have much of an opinion on these just because I need to play with them and really see how they all fit. Do they color lock themselves? What kind of deck do these all? So I'm going to let Jared take the bulk of this. But I do like this artwork, and it's always neat to see these cute little tribals. How good is it going to be?
Yeah, I agree with Mannequins 2.0 sentiment for the most part. They have their Lady of Antiquity in, was it Shinju? Was that her name?
So.
Yeah, in Shinju. But I do think that it kind of comes together a little more quickly because the three best cards are all in the same element. So whereas with mannequins, you kind of have Lady of Antiquity, Delusory Warlock in lightning. So you had Earth, lightning, and then you had Delusory Knight in water. Where like your three good cards that kind of get it all set up are all like spread out, and it's kind of hard, like wonky, to get them all working at the same time. The good thing about the Soiree members is that Amber, who is the Searcher, is in Earth. The Shinju, who is the Lady of Antiquity, is in Earth, and the boss monster, which is Edel, which is kind of like Golbez, I guess, for the archetype, is also in Earth. So I think it's a lot easier to kind of get the ball rolling on this one. The trade-off there is that they're not standard units, right? So it is a little more difficult to say exactly like what the right distribution of these are. That being said, I think it's very easy if you think about it as like, well, your deck is going to be the 3 Earth ones, and then you're going to play the 4 drops because they come out of the Madame Edel. And then how many backups and like the other ones that you play is kind of like up to you, I think. I think if I was going to build this deck today, I would just put 3 of all of them in and like see what happened. But I think for like what element combinations this could work in, I think you can make it mono Earth. I think you could make it Earth Wind because 2 of them are in Wind. And I think you could also go, the one that I'm probably most excited to try is Earth Ice. Because like I was talking about with Kyrian earlier, so Kyrian can play any of the Soiree members, can also play Adele, also plays Renoa. So you have the Renoa synergy going on, and then you also get access to Shantoto when you do it that way. And when you get access to Shantoto, that lets you recycle the Edel when the Edel gets picked off, and then Edel will get another one when she comes in. So there's just a lot of value to be had off of Kyrian. And notice that basically every 4 that we've talked about going into the deck, besides the 3CPEX Soiree member, is a 4-drop. So like that obviously works, incredibly well with the with Kyrian and all of these effects. There is a little bit of wonky in the early game. It's like, well, what if you just like don't draw Amber, and that will suck. I think my recommendation for that kind of situation in particular is just like, well, you should just be able to kind of like build the deck such that you can either Kyrian or Amber or like Edel out like an aggro board and kind of get the ball rolling very slowly. So I think that the most difficult Soiree members to slot are going to be the fire backup, which is really, really good, but it seems difficult to play.
Yeah.
And the wind ones, unless you're playing Earth Wind specifically.
I won't lie, Edel's text kind of scares me a little bit, just because, again, that's really good protection. So I'm hoping these are more in the mannequin vein, and that they're good and they're fun, but, they're not going to just frustrate you to no end, and it's not on the other end where it's like, wow, these things are really obnoxious to deal with.
Yeah. Edel not having a cost restriction on that's where I remember that she can bring out. So you literally, it's just always get a good card is kind of scary to me. The lightning one is like break it forward. The water one is like draw 2 cards, because if you have the backups, then it's just like always online. So it's just like draw 2 cards or break it forward or Zidane your opponent. And I'm like, these cards look pretty good.
Right. So we'll see how Soiree does after they've given a good breakdown there by Jared. So here's that Mira card you mentioned, and again, this is one of those cards that if you're going in on the monsters, Mira always seems to be tied to monsters, all of her cards, but this one's pretty interesting. So it's kind of dependent on the damage, so you're probably not wanting to rush this one out early. And then I don't know, I find that like I like the one when she enters the break zone one. I don't know, maybe there's something I'm not seeing there. Like in theory, I'm like, well, let's see, crack a flan, they discard, you can nuke something for 2, but the 2 is so tiny, and I just can't imagine a turn where you're like dumping a ton of monsters. Like, I don't know. So I don't know how useful that effect will be, but her entry effect is obviously pretty good if you want to go into that monster build.
Yeah, the entry effect is very solid, and that's probably like 99% of the reason you would play this card.
Yeah.
Now, the other 1%, I think, is the bottom text. I also originally thought, well, like, this is just stupid. Like, they could have just drilled races from the card. It didn't matter. But I think that there are some infinite loops with Zoo, the 2 CP wind monster that reactivates all of your backups. I'm pretty sure so you could potentially play the Mira as a combo piece in that infinite loop, which is again very convoluted. But you would get to ping something for 2 every time you completed the loop, so that could potentially be an infinite board clear in a Zoo infinite loop or like a Sahagin Chief infinite loop, which there have been a few of before.
Nice. All right, now moving on to a card that, even though I've never really played this game, I do really like this artwork from Montleonis. He got, of course, a really nice mono card in Opus 14. And this one, he's got his own protection effect, which is nice, and his special is very good. It seems like, in general, with specials, they've really started moving them towards only costing a single card from hand, which I kind of think is appropriate, because these are the hardest abilities to use in the game, because you have to have a very specific card to sack it for. So I do really like his special. Beyond that, I was thinking about him, like, it's cool because he's a sticky big body. He's technically under curve. He only costs 4 or whatever. But again, I guess it's one of those, is big dudes enough? Because if a big guy who you have trouble dealing with is good enough, then I think this card's quite good. But if you need more than that, then maybe he falls short. How do you see Mr. Leonis?
Yeah, I feel mostly the same about it. He is a very big guy, and it's kind of thrown out some of that. Well, 4 CP cards are really 8Ks. Like you can't say that anymore. The 4 CP 8K is now below the curve because Montleonis has a bunch of upside, and he's a 4 CP 9K. Yeah. There's no demerit text here, so the card. I don't think it's particularly good, but if big dudes are ever going to be good, then like this has got to be like the start of it, I think. Notably, by being FFBE, you can search him with Maga FFBE. So if there's an Earth Wind deck that is potentially interested in this sort of effect, then this sort of defensive card, this could be a potentially good way to use accrue more copies for his S ability. But I don't really see this taking off, unfortunately. Yeah. He is cool, though.
We'll see where he goes. Next, we have Lael, man. They really want to make Lael a thing. Like, I feel like they're always making new Lael cards. This is our 4th one, maybe? Nonetheless, I actually kind of like this card because it's just kind of quirky. I like the idea of, again, they're not expecting to, like, block or whatever. They got some baby four they want to keep alive, and you drop the Lael, say, hey, you got to block all of a sudden. How about that? That at the same time, it again also kind of hurts you potentially, but in theory, if you've got the big dudes, surely you should come out on top. I kind of wish he didn't cost so much. I think I'd like him a lot better if he was like 3 or 4 maybe even, but man, 5 just feels so expensive for an effect that might end up hurting you more in the long run anyway, but I do at least appreciate the kind of quirky design of him.
Yeah, I think I'm a lot higher on this card than most people, I would say, because I think that a lot of the design of this set and last set is like, well, you're kind of punished for trying to remove your opponent's stuff. And Lael kind of changes all of that because, like, well, I'm not removing it. You're suiciding all of your guys into me. And I think that is something that is probably underappreciated by a lot of the community right now. I think that this card would be probably quite good at 3 or 4. I agree. At 5, again, I mostly agree with you in that it seems a little too expensive to really be good. I'm guessing that they tested this at 4 and it was actually kind of oppressive. And they wanted to make it more difficult to resolve on an already even-ish board state. But yeah, like I said with Agrias and Lastwell, like the way that you beat these cards, quote unquote, is not by like killing them. It's not by like doing your own thing faster than racing them. It's by blocking. And Lael kind of fits directly into that sort of playstyle. So yeah, I think that this card is much better than what I've seen a lot of people rate it. Do I think it's a new meta card? No, probably not. But it's going to live like ride or die on how good Big Dudes is as a strategy.
Welcome to the Big Dudes party. Well, speaking of dudes, not necessarily big, but here we got Leslie. And so this is the card that brings out the old man in me that was like, backups are meant to be dulled for CP. You don't just give those away to your opponent. At the same time, similar to Lael, I really like his design just because I like different cards like this, even if even if they don't end up being competitive, it's just cool to see a different idea. And so really, you can think of this as removal because you can't. You're not really going to tap it for CP, but maybe an Earth, because if you play him in mono Earth, you can avoid his effects, and you can basically just hold on to him to when you want to give him to your opponent at the right time. Could be like a ticking time bomb kind of thing. He's a bit expensive, but if you're breaking 2 forwards, that seems pretty good. So I don't know. This is kind of one I struggle to judge, just because, again, the part of me is like, well, no, I just want to use my backups for CP, but I could also see this as a surprise. You got to kill your 2 guys now, and I'm not picking them. So if it's like a Broskus or something, too bad. So what do you think of Leslie?
I think, I'm not really high on this card. I know some people thought it was like Shantoto 2.0. Some people also thought it was, like Shantoto 0.5 or, whatever. I think it's kind of closer to like the powered down Shantoto kind of thing. It's just forwards, they don't cost as much as they used to, It's also bringing out my inner old man. But yeah, the forwards, they cost 2 CP now. You're gonna kill two CP forwards with a 6-drop? It's like, no, probably not. So I don't see this card doing a lot of work. That being said, I think if this card came out, in like Opus 8, this card would have been probably pretty good. You kill your opponent's lock and Celeste, and you don't have any cards in hand. They kind of have to shrug, and you reset the board. But nowadays, when forwards are being played for 0 and 2 and whatever, this card is just not getting the job done, I think.
Value's just not there. Great point. Let's move away from Earth to Lightning. This first assassin backup, unless you've got something to say, this reminds me of another. Would this have been good even at Opus 1?
Yeah, I mean, the one saving grace for this card is that it's an FFTA. So maybe there's some, Lightning Ritz stuff if there was anything like that going on. Maybe.
Yeah. Then we have Ixion, who he's such a cool summon from 10, but I don't know. I just don't like this. Again, even if this is one of those ones that even if you pay all the elements, 2K is so minor. I don't know. Maybe you could do some combat swings with this, but just... And we just got the Remora, which does the 7K swing. I don't know. This one just seems so... And we have Ramu's that reduced by 7, and he's a 7, but he's got a burst. So I don't know. This one feels so old. It feels like this should have come out in Opus 8, right?
Yeah, I don't think that this card is playable, really, which is sad because I love this summon in 10. So
yeah, it's a really cool one. Then we have Puppet Master, kind of fodder as well, unless you got something to say about it. I'll move along.
No.
And now finally, we are to our first Lightning Legend, and this is Black Waltz 3. And we got all these cool new Black Waltz cards. We skipped over a bunch of them, but they all have the text that if they're ever discarded from the hand due to an ability, you get to blast something for 4,000. Then individually, they all have their own action ability to purposely discard them and then do whichever one is for their flavors. These seem really cool to me, in particular the fact that I'm pretty sure this can just loop with Vivi. They can just keep kind of trading each other in and out if you die. A really cool kind of stained glass mosaic artwork too, and I love that you can see Vivi on the back. And this one is just such a memorable moment from Final Fantasy IX. I got a lot of hope for these. My only concern is that they all specifically say Job Black Mage, and there's not a lot of Job Black Mages. There's the Vivis, there's the Waltzes, and I think Robel Akbel. Maybe there's one more. And there's a lot of standard...
there's Palom.
Palom,
too.
That's right. Palom's the other one. There's a lot of standard unit Black Mages, but they don't work with these, which is... I don't know if maybe it's a future-proofing thing, because a lot of those cards are so old, I can't picture that being an issue. But I really like these. I think this is really cool design. I would love to see these be a kind of surprise little, wow, these are a lot stronger than people realized, and a cool little tribal. So how do you view the Black Mages?
Yeah, so I will take the liberty of talking about this card and the Waltzes in general with Vivi, because I think it's kind of they go hand in hand for the most part. So I'm actually pretty high on these. I think that these cards are really quite good. I was surprised at so I played one game against it, and I've had my own build with it, and I was just drawing hands and seeing how it goes, and it seems kind of oppressive to just play a Black Waltz 3, because your opponent now, when they're staring down the Black Waltz, or I guess any of the Black Waltzes, it doesn't have to be 3, you just have a 0 CP break a dude and potentially deal 4K or potentially deal 5K or whatever. And it's actually just really hard to fight against these cards. And I think you nailed it quite hard in that. Well, Black Waltz 3, he gets back to Vivi, and then Vivi gets back to Black Waltz 3, and that's just like a self-contained loop. And it's even if you don't have any other black mages in the deck, just having 3 of each black mage of each Black Waltz, and then having 3 Vivi, and that's just like a nice little 12-card self-contained package that can work in so many decks, in so many elements. I think you can do it in Earth Lightning, like you said, with the Robel. It works really well there. Vivi also gets the Robel back to your hand, so I think that works. I think it works in Ice Lightning because Vivi is an Al Cid target, and although you're kind of going down 1 on the chain, Black Waltz 3 is also an Al Cid target, and a quite good one at that, I think. And Al Cid Zero Miss and Ice Lightning in general, it has some really good cards, and it's kind of struggled with like, okay, what do I do besides put in Al Cid and Zero Miss? Because like everything else kind of sucks, So I think this is kind of a slam dunk there, where Black Waltz 1 and Black Waltz 3 fit into the elements there, and you kind of have some extra filler cards in the Black Waltz 2. Just a nice, clean 12-card package to put in so many different decks. I think it works in Fire Lightning. In Fire Ice, I'm a little less excited because I think Black Waltz 3 is obviously the best of them, and without being able to play Black Waltz 3 to the field, it seems, and VV to the field, it's a little less exciting. But I think, Ice Lightning, Ice Fire, Lightning Fire, and Lightning Earth, it just seems like it's hard to go wrong with these cards. I'm really excited to try more of them and see how they shape the meta.
Seems like very potent removal, good combination with Al Cid, like you mentioned. And I kind of just realized these action abilities have no limit on them. You can do them as many times as you're able to pay, which that is kind of scary. And as you've mentioned just recently, a lot of 2-cost forwards. So this guy breaking 3-cost or less, he's got a lot of target. He just sees the guy behind the tree. It's like, oh boy, breaking all these forwards. Yeah, they seem they could be pretty potent.
Yeah, your opponent can't play Palom or Porom. They're not safe because you can break one and then the black mage will kill the other one with the 4K. It just seems so naturally well-rounded.
Yeah, they seem really strong. All right, Zach. Hey, I think a pretty solid Zach card. I've always felt like Zach kind of just gets the shaft according in reference to some of the other 7 characters, but I like this. You definitely want to play this with other 7 characters. It's nice that if you play it in something other than Lightning, which a ton of the other 7 characters are in Fire and Earth, you'd happily do that. So you reduce him by 2. I don't know which deck you necessarily fit him in, but I like that when he dies too, you can play a 7 character, so it's could be a backup as well. And if you want to take that risk, play something higher, hey, it's only going to cost you 1 point of damage. So I like this guy quite a bit.
Yeah, I like the effect. This was one of the cards that we revealed on the Hobby Japan stream back when we were first getting spoilers. I think that the card is quite good. My problem with it is that it just doesn't seem clear where you're going to put this card. The only really clear avenue I saw of using it was Cloud Pod, where it's an off-color card, but it's at least a very strong-looking off-color payoff. And so you might consider playing it in that deck as a 1 or 2 of. Now, is that deck even still competing with other top tier strategies? That I'm not so sure about, and so I'm not so sure about where we're going to see the Zach. But it would surprise me if we never saw this card take off. It does have the potential there. You
won't get the reduction, but I could see potential in Turks too, getting to play Sang back for free because he's such a potent Turk. So, moving on to my favorite game in the series and really cool artwork in this card. This is Seymour doing some summon shenanigans. I don't think his entry effect is too difficult to reach. 3 summons isn't too many, and especially in the decks I play, even though I only run 9 or 8 summons, I always draw them all early. So you could bet I'll have him in the break zone for Seymour. And then again, he rewards you I like that he rewards you farther, that if you really build into a lot of summons at the end, you can do that surprise. Oh, and by the way, now you're dead. Really like this artwork. Very, very stylized, and I appreciate the motion going into it. Obviously, you're going to have to build around this, but, anytime a summon that can deal you damage kind of turns it into a win condition to a degree, very interesting to me.
Yeah, I think you're going to play this card because of the auto ability. You come in, you see 3 summons, you break it forward. That's just really solid on a 4 drop. I expect to see that. Obviously, it's an Alcid target, so in the same way, it could be good in a potential, you know, Alcid Zero Miss shell. If a deck like that is maybe playing, you know, Odins with Lightning or something like that, it could be good there. The action ability is something that I kind of expect you to threaten more than actually use. And so it's like, well, hey, if you don't kill Seymour, then I'm just going to kill you. But they'll probably kill Seymour because of that. So it is definitely relevant. It is good text. And I think one thing on my checklist of like things to do this Opus is to use Seymour's action ability with Go-Go on the field to do 2 points damage to my opponent.
Nice.
But yeah, this is probably one of the best like generic lightning cards we've gotten in a long time. So I expect to see this card going forward. I don't know if there's a clear place to play this card this set, but maybe if there's like an Ice Lightning Terra deck with the Opus 15 Terra, this would be a nice addition to that as well.
Seymour is a very underrepresented character in this game, I think, and I don't know if he's had a floor.
Yeah,
so it's nice to see him go to good. However, going from an underrepresented to an overrepresented character, which is Chadley, because this is his first card. And I just didn't like this character at all in 7, so to me, he's overrepresented. I'm curious to see how you think about this, because on one hand, I can see the value of, like, you're later in the game, you've saved up your counters, and your key forward went away. It was Behemoth King or Gilgamesh, 5-cost Gilgamesh, and you just tap Chadley, boom, you get your key forward back. That feels good. However, on another hand, part of me wonders, like, it seems like a very fair card in the sense that we pay 4 to do nothing originally, and then you're dulling him so you're not getting his value back, and he's getting you a card back, but if you think about it, he gets the 2 cards that you basically spent to use him in the first place, so in that sense, he seems like just very kind of and there, like, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's basically it. I think that this card is pretty underwhelming. You have to, like, you get all of the payoff of a 0 CP backup, like 4 turns after you play the card, which is like, well, you could just be dead in 4 turns. So I don't even think like playing this. It's not good playing early because it prevents you from playing other cards. It's not good playing late because it just takes too long to get the value back that would make it potentially useful in the first place. So yeah, I don't think that this card is good at all. Well, just like it Lightning had to be the sacrificial lamb, I guess, for this one.
I guess so. Well, speaking of lightning cards, Noel, he's always struggled to get a good card. I know you're a 13 guy, so I'm curious to see what you like. I mean, it's expensive. I like the burst, you know, a double dull on a burst. See, it's weird because dulling on a burst is just so situational because sometimes it saves you. It will keep you from dying in a game, which is great. Other times you hit it when they've already attacked and there's nothing left to dull, so it doesn't do anything. So, like, I always go back and forth on dull as a burst because, again, sometimes it's great. Other times it's like, oh, well, you already attacked, so dull the thing that's already dull. I think I would really like his action ability if he didn't have to dull himself. I like the idea that, like, he could, I don't know, like, but maybe that would be too strong if he could just attack in and then he could just break himself at will to just Bahamut 0, but just, I don't know. I'm kind of underwhelmed by this guy. Do you feel any different?
Yeah, I think this card is awful. I am really upset that Noel always gets beaten down like that. He's such a nice character in 13-2 and in Lightning Returns that it's incredible to me that they just continue to give him all of these garbage cards. But I think this card is one word away from being really good, and that word is haste. If this card had haste, then I think, you know, you come in, you dull 2 guys, you attack with a 9k, and then on your opponent's turn, you could, you know, you could sack him off to do his ability. Then he would be like a really good card. But because of that, you have to play him, and then he has to live a whole turn, and then you also have to, you know, dull him, so not get an attack with him, and then put him in the break zone. It's way too much. I think they could have made this card like a nice like legend that could actually be really, really good for Lightning if it just had like, you know, 4 CP, 8k, haste, and then the rest of the text is the same. Or maybe it doesn't require dull. Then it could just be like a nice generically good Lightning legend. But because of like these very minor tweak differences, the card is unplayable.
Yep. Made some sad stuff. We're actually in Opus 16, but you'd think we were in 15 because we've got another Noctis for some reason. Yeah. Plenty of Noctises. And this card is clearly meant to be thrown into a 15 deck. I think it'd be amazing in a 15 title deck. Man, I don't know. Like, so it's cool that he can become completely free. Again, playing a 9-cost body for free is awesome. And then when any 15 character enters, you're going to dull them. But the thing is, outside of title, and I've done a lot of these 15 decks before, like, again, he's Noctis. If he was a different... If this was Ravis, oh, man, finally a good Ravis card. But there's already really good Noctises to play. But maybe you don't... Well, see, but this thing, you have to play him in 15. Because I was going to say you could just jam in Mono Lightning, but to get his effects, you have to constantly play 15 cards. So, I don't know, man. Like, I think there's some potential here, but I'm kind of also underwhelmed by this guy.
Yeah, I think if you're playing a 15 deck, you're probably always going to be locked into one of the other Noctises. However, there is a 15 deck that is mostly Mono Lightning that doesn't play Noctis, and that is Kingsglaive. So I think that this card is great for Kingsglaive. It gets cheap really, really quickly. You know, you have the 4 Kingsglaive backups. You know, you have Regis, who's going to make him cheaper too. Or I mean, not Regis, just having a 15 character on the field. You know, you have all of these like 0 and 1 CP essentially cards that are going to make the Noctis cheaper. And I think, you know, once the Noctis hits the field, it's nice to have a 9k. That deck is kind of low on power. You know, there's Nyx, who represents more, but you kind of want to keep the Kingsglaive in your break zone. So he's kind of like a 7 to 8k most of the time. And then Regis, who is an 8k until you hit the damage threshold. It'll be nice to have an early 9k in that deck, and Noctis fits that very well. Also, the Dole is something that like Kingsglaive had basically no access to. You know, you had to use Crow, or you had to break it, or like break the forward with Sanitas or something like that, so to really push your attacks through. And I think the Dole will be very, very welcome in that deck. So I think that Noctis will be great for Kingsglaive. Whether Kingsglaive is a good deck or not is kind of like up in the air, but this will be a great addition for that.
Wow, how did I overlook Kingsglaive? It's like Kingsglaive came out last set, and this Noctis like stopped by the side of the road. Like, hold on, I want to enjoy this drink before it's up with 16. I got to get over there. Yeah, great point. Yeah. I think he'll fit well there. All right. Next we have Palmer, who is a funny little character in 7. You know, he doesn't have a huge part, but he's another Shinra guy. And I loved this card until I got to the last sentence. Like, you dull him, lightning. You look at the top 4, and that matters. It means your opponent doesn't get to see it, and you get to pull 2 cards out of that your opponent... I love that. I love that. And he's a 2 CP, so you're happy to just play him early. And then you realize to use this awesome effect, you have to have an empty hand. Like, why? No, someone answer me. Why do you have to have an empty hand for that? Go ahead.
Well, I think you need to have an empty hand for that, because otherwise it's just, you know, put the card in the break zone, pay 1, dull it, draw 2, which is kind of a little, maybe not too broken, but maybe a little too good to just put on like a generic 2-cost backup. That being said, I think that this card is really, really good. I think that Lightning is one of the strategies that kind of plays out their hand the most, because it's all, you know, it's always about the tempo. It's always about, you know, dull your opponent's stuff, you know, keep hitting them, keep them down, and that's kind of the fighting style of the deck. And because of that, it's one of those decks that can run out of gas a little bit faster than the other decks if you're, you know, your opponent flips 1 burst, or, you know, they had a Brynhilder at the wrong time, whatever. You can kind of trip and fall, and this card will be very, very good when you need just a little bit more pushing power. So I do think that this card is quite good. Lightning, not in the best spot, but if there are some Lightning decks that have the space to put this in, I would expect that we can see this be one of those slots.
Will we be drinking tea with Palmer? Find out next time on Lightning. All right. Next we have Vivi. We mentioned him with the Black Waltzes, so I'll go past him. He's great. Byakuyo mentioned the Shijins with Kirin. Hyo, I'm not sure how to say this card. I was super excited about this card when I read it. I was like, wow, it's so cheap, and it's so cheap to buff it up. But then I started thinking about it, and that if you pay for all of his effects, so he's 1 CP to enter, and then he needs another 4 CP to become his big boss mode, which it's cool it doesn't end at the end of the turn. However, I started thinking about it. So when you pay 5 CP for this guy, he deals 2 damage instead of 1 if he hits them, and he has 10,000 power. There's also a card called Behemoth King that also costs 5 CP that deals damage just by attacking. Doesn't even have to hit him. He becomes 12,000 power, and he counters forwards if they try to choose him. So when I thought about him in that light, I was very underwhelmed. Now, granted, maybe that's not what he's supposed to be. Maybe you're supposed to use him as like, haha, combat trick, 7,000 power, I guess. But I don't know. Like, when I compared him to Behemoth King, I couldn't help but be like, oh, yeah, I'll just play that card.
Yeah, I think this is one example of like, well, maybe this card ends up being better. It's like Behemoth King. It might be better. It might be worse than Behemoth King. And if you're only playing one of them, you might end up choosing Behemoth King over Hyo. However, I think this is one case where having a lot of cards that do the same thing is kind of powerful. And I think that Hyo and Behemoth King will probably go in the same kind of deck together rather than being one or the other.
Interesting.
The big trade-off here with Hyo is that you can just play him as a 1-drop and then pay the 1 and then worry about doing more damage later with him, which I think is probably where he's going to be. So he's not a 2-drop because you have to pay 1 and then 1, which is a lot harder than paying 2, obviously. So there is that trade-off for him. But he does seem good when you have the backups to play him out. I'm not so sold on always having those backups because Lightning really likes to put the pressure on as soon as it can, and because of that, it tends to kind of stumble on the backup sometimes. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of locked into mono Lightning because you have to pay only Lightning for him, and then you have to pay 1/1. So it's kind of difficult to kind of put together a deck that really capitalizes on all the strength that Hyo could potentially be putting out. That being said, when he does come together, when you have that mono Lightning deck, when you are putting on the turn 1, turn 2 turn 1, 2 backups into turn 2, just like play Hyo, swing him, and then turn 3, turn it on with a discard, he will probably feel really, really good. Now, like whether that kind of deck is good, remains to be seen.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I like that analysis. Next, we have Spectral Keeper. I kind of like this card a lot. In particular, what I like about him is that, again, if you're doing kind of an aggro hasty thing, I put out my Roche turn 1 for free. He ran into you. And then they're like, okay, well, Roche is really weak. I'll just put a blocker in it. And it's like, all right, again, I'm going to put this monster to the side that you can't really interact with because he's just a monster. And now it kind of reminds me of like Snow and Ice, and that you always need to have extra forwards than you think you do because I'm just going to keep pushing them out of the way. So I not only did I always like this boss in 10, but just I like that effect too. And the fact that he's 2, like, just feels really good that for one card, put him down, be like, you can't, again, saying you have to do something else. You can't block me because I'm just going to constantly push your stuff out of the way.
Yeah, I think that this card is potentially quite powerful. Obviously, you get 1 dull, and then when you have damage 3, he becomes an attacker, and you get 2 dulls, and that's really good. Now, I don't expect if you're the kind of deck that wants to play this card that you really actually get to damage 3 without just like being so far behind very often. Your opponent's probably not racing you, if that makes sense. They're probably like, oh god, I'm gonna die. I gotta play more blockers. So like, I don't think that this one is one of the cards that's like, well, it actually just does become a forward a lot of the time. I don't think it does. The other thing, the only other big thing that I have, like gripe-wise about this card is that you have to choose something. Yeah. So if my opponent just has like an Agrius, well, now I have to discard a card. Mm-hmm. So I don't know about this one compared to some of the other ones. The power is there, but it kind of feels like it's got like the unfortunate circumstance syndrome going on with this one.
You could bite yourself in the butt. No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then we have Merold, was one of the Soiree members. Talked about them. We'll go past. And here we have Y'shtola. Greg, I know you were excited about this card. I know you love your science, and I do too. So I'm sorry to tell you, this card blows. And let me explain here, because I'm a Scion player. It blows in the context of making Scions a better tribal. On its own, I think it's totally fine. However, it's locked into Scions. You can't just use it as a generic Lightning Legend because all of its text is Scions related. And Scions as a tribal will never get better if they just keep reprinting the same Scions like they did with the starter set. We got a new Y'shtola. We got a new Thancred. Okay, we have those cards. Y'shtola was already one of the better cards in that deck, so I'm now losing that Y'shtola for this one. And like her entry effect is good, although I find the fact that it counts Scion forwards kind of weird. Especially because Scions have always been about counting the entire team, so I don't know why this one always counts forwards. And then they do this thing with these Scions cards, like the Thancred from Opus 7, and there was another one, the new Thancred from Opus 13, where, oh, you can dull a Scion to give a 14 forward haste and first strike. They're Scions. They have haste. That's what the deck, like, can I give it protection? Can I give it something else? What if we give it haste? They've all already got haste. Like, and then, you know, we talked about specials earlier. This special is very expensive. It's a special, and 2 lightning specifically, and you dull the Y'shtola, and it deals 9,000 to everything that's not a Scion, which again is cool. It's not that it's a bad card. It's just I don't think this improves Scions as a tribal. Rant over.
Yeah, no, I mostly agree. I think that this card is like, I was like, okay, so they showed us all these awesome win cards, and I've looked at the ice cards, and the ice cards, they actually look pretty good. Like, I actually think ice is coming back this set. So like, surely there must be, you know, some like nice aggro lightning cards to round out, you know, the set, so that like there's actually a balance between control and aggro. And then I looked and I was like, okay, so what's the other lightning legend that we didn't see? And I was like, oh. it was so painful. I was like, oh, I finally looked at the lightning cards, and this is what was waiting for me. Yeah, I am really low on the card. I think that the only saving grace for this card, somebody pointed out that the Opus 12 Thancred. So if you have 3 water or 2 waters and the Thancred, then you can bring back the Y'shtola. So the Y'shtola will deal minus 8k, and then use the Y'shtola to duel herself and give Thancred haste. And then Thancred gets to attack, so you get to break something with the Thancred effect. I think if you get to do that, you know, you're living in fantasy dreamland. That isn't like something that you actually get to do in like Opus 16 Final Fantasy trading card game anymore. But, you know, if you get to do it, it does seem kind of powerful. But, like, you have to play Water Lightning to play the Thancred, and then you have to dump the Y'shtola beforehand, and you can't search it. So it's like, you can't search the Thancred unless you're using, you know, like Aldo, like the generic stuff. So it's just so far-fetched and so far away that I don't think that this card is seeing any play for the time being. You know, that being said, someday, you know, maybe there's like a bunch of, you know, Mono Lightning, Scion stuff, and that's playable in Standard, and then this card could be good there as like just the auto ability is, again, really good, but just like you have the Scions, and Scions are awful in Standard, so I don't know.
It's baffling that as hard as they push the 7 remake, 14's one of their big games right now too, that they just like they just don't give 14 the same treatment. So disappointed.
Well, I will say they made Primals really good.
They did do it with the Primals.
Yeah, but the Scions are not.
Yeah, not with the Scions. All right, Y'shtola, get out of here. There's the Uke backup. We talked about those. We'll talk about something a little interesting, Lon, and we'll talk about Rain here in a moment. Again, really powerful effects that they become 9Ks, and then they have this permanent Lon, as we've seen with a lot of these other ones. Hey, I can just dull something. And in particular is that it goes on each player's turn. The Rain, obviously, I don't know if that's as relevant, because I don't know why you'd haste one of your opponent's things. Maybe you haste something on your turn that you can dull for an action ability, but still, I like that permanent buff. Obviously, you got to have a monster that you can remove, so I'm not 100% sure what kind of deck you build these on, but it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, so one thing that, among the long list of things that Lightning doesn't have going for it, one of those things is not the monsters are bad. So Lightning has pretty good monsters in general. Thunder Drake in particular is like one that has kind of, it looked pretty good last set, but then, you know, aside from killing the twins, there wasn't really a whole lot that you could actually kill with a Thunder Drake, just because, like, well, you can't really choose Sky Pirates, you know, like you're just like not. It's just written on the card. You're not allowed to do that. Sorry, sir, but you're not allowed to choose Sky Pirates. So, yeah. So besides that, Thunder Drake was kind of a middling card, but it was more like Thunder Drake was a good card, but Lightning just wasn't really in the position to be playing just on the strength of Thunder Drake alone. But yeah, Thunder Drake being a good card, and like Skeleton also being able to break 2-drops, and then this whole host of just like a bunch of value 2-drops being introduced in the set kind of has me thinking, well, maybe there is like a lightning water deck or whatever that has, some monster stuff going on in it. And in there, Land and Rain by extension look pretty solid. My only thing is like, well, if I'm playing like a monster deck and I'm playing all of these, like kind of dirtily chill my opponent's creatures cards, like, well, am I really gonna want to like have Land and Rain when these are kind of like aggressive cards? And I don't think it's not really immediately clear whether or not that's great. But yeah, I do think Realm is in those colors too. Thunder Drake, Skeleton, Blue Worm. These are pretty solid cards. And if you're already playing a deck like that, Land and Rain seem like pretty decent choices to be in that sort of deck.
Yeah, good point. All right, there we have Larva. That's the lightning monster that can scry.
Mm-hmm.
I'll rotate past that one. Here we have Reeve. Again, like with the Palmer, they tried to give lightning these value backups. And I don't know, this one, maybe some people will love this one. This is just not my style. Again, if I put a backup down, I want to use it to generate crystal points. And him not activating, it's like, to me, it's like, well, that defeats the purpose of putting down a backup. I don't want a backup that doesn't activate. It's indiscriminate 2 cost as long as it doesn't have to be lightning. So again, maybe some people really like this. It's just is not my style. Do you like this?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some decks that like, oh yeah, Reeve, this is the card that I wanted. It seems decent for like, the like Golbez strategies where you play like a bunch of off-color 2-drops, stuff like that. I think it's the kind of card that like when the deck wants it, it's going to be very clear that like Reeve is a good card in the deck. That being said, we have a really good Reeve. There's a 3CP EX backup that searches more backups and Vincent. So like I wasn't really like overjoyed to see, oh, they gave us a cool card, but it's like weird and it has a name sharing with another good card. So I'm a little lower on it than what I've seen some people, but I think if your deck is like thirsty for this kind of effect, then it's going to be great in that deck. So
yeah. All right, finishing off Lightning, we've got the Rain, which we kind of touched on. In particular, I kind of rate this one a little higher just because haste can be such a potent thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's some version of deck you could build with a forward that you want to attack because it has an attack trigger, like the Thancred you mentioned, like Broska's Final Aeon, any forward that again gets some kind of effect when it attacks. The idea that, and I think Rain could potentially be a little scary that no matter what I put down, it's immediately going in at you. So I definitely like her a little more than the Lan.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if like you said, the haste on your opponent's turn is really relevant. My example is like, well, you could give Amon haste was like how I was trying to convince myself that it was potentially relevant at all. And I'm like, no, maybe someday there's something, but like basically every good action ability nowadays just like costs 0, mm-hmm. So or gets cheaper or whatever. So I don't really see a lot of dull action abilities that Rain is going to be pushing or anything like that. So that's whatever. However, giving something haste, being a 3CP 9K that gives something haste all the time, well, that's just pretty good,
Absolutely. All right, that'll wrap up Lightning. Let's finish off our main 6 elements with a splash into water. And here we have Andrea Rodea, a very interesting addition to Final Fantasy VII Remake with that very expanded Honeybee Inn section. I was not expecting that when I played the game. A lot of people got their wish with this card. They did want him to be partially Job Dancer, which they got. Funny thing is, though, like, he doesn't, as far as dancers go, I feel like he's just a body because both of his abilities are tied to 7 characters, and I don't think there's really a ton of 7 characters in water or as dancers anyway. So if you put him in dancers, he's kind of just another dancer body. His 7 effects are kind of crazy, like that first one especially, that you can just dull any 2 active 7 characters and it blanks all their forwards. Like, good gravy, that seems pretty potent. I don't know how good the second one, like the removal is good on the second one, but again, what cloud are you running this with? So he's a cool card. I wonder where he fits in though.
Yeah, I wanted to try dancers this deck, and I've got a couple of like ideas bouncing around in my head, particularly Wind Water Dancers is kind of where the majority of the dancers are. And in that deck in particular, when this card was revealed, I was like, well, there's not really a whole lot of backups to play this off of that give you value. However, now we've had the addition of Chocobo Sam, of Madam M, and who we're going to get to in a little bit here, Kirie. These are 3 really good, Final Fantasy VII backups in color, and then he can also duel himself, which is important to remember. So if you just have one of them, then he's online for the blank ability, and that's probably good enough for me. The blank ability is really, really appealing.
Yeah.
The second ability is good. However, I totally agree with you. It's like, well, what cloud are you playing that you can actually play this to the field? When I thought about it like that, it's I think the answer would be Light Cloud.
Yeah.
So you can play the 4CP 7K Light Cloud that lets you kind of like break through stuff, and then you can search this card out, and it kind of turns it on there. Now, is that like something you're going to be doing in Dancers? It's kind of weird. I'm not really sure about that one, but it is an option on the table for the deck, and this card is good enough that like if you can, use the cloud in this card to continuously send cards to the bottom of your opponent's deck and blank your opponent's whole field. Well, that does seem pretty solid, so I think it's worth a shot.
Yeah, good analysis there, sir. Next we have Ezel. I like the art, but in my opinion, so for 1 more CP, you can play Thoradin, who gets you any card you want out of your deck, and he's in the X Burst, and he has another effect if he ever goes off the field. Or you can, if you really want to save that 1 CP, you can play Ezel and try to complicatedly figure out which ones to discard so you can search for what you want. So like, if Thoradin didn't exist, I'd maybe be a little bigger on this, but I'm just like, yeah, I'd rather pay the extra to get the burst and not have to do all that hoopla. What about you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a normal card, I think that you're basically right. It's like, well, I'm never going to play this card over. There's like a normal ass option. However, it does have the FFTA tag. So as that category, it does make Marsh cheaper, which is potentially relevant. And for the new Marsh, which we'll talk about a little bit more coming up, he requires a certain number of FFT characters on the board to start resolving his auto ability. And it will be useful for that. Also because Marsh is so big as a 6-drop, it'll be really easy to, pitch a 2 and a 4 and immediately search out the Marsh with Ezel. So I do like this card for like specifically that deck only.
Yeah, that's fair. Next we have Kimari, and when the 10 starter set got released, I was like, where's Kimari? Like, how does Kimari not get a new card? Like, whether they're dissing on my favorite Ronso? Excuse me. And then when I first read this one, I won't lie, I was a little disappointed, but I also kind of misread it. For some reason, I just assumed that the counter, like, disappeared. I didn't realize that the counter was actually permanent, that as long as that forward was there. And so part of me is like, well, but again, it's got that backup thing of like, well, really, I want to forward out first that I can then put the Kimari backup down. And so I was kind of having trouble evaluating it. However, specifically in like a 10 deck, it's very appealing to give Orin that counter to say, hey, you got to choose him and you can't hurt him with anything. Good luck. But really, you could just play this in any deck you want, and just, I don't know, like, I kind of keep going back and forth on this guy. On one hand, I really like him. On one hand, maybe I'm still just disappointed that we didn't get, like, why is he in the set? Why didn't he come with the starter set? That would have been cool to see this back up in there. So, but I think I am coming around on him the more I think about him. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I really like the card. I think for the Guardian 10 stuff specifically, well, losing the big Kimari is not really a big deal. It would be nice if you could play them together, but it's not particularly important. And in that deck, you really want to protect Waka, and it also works, like you said, really well with Orin. So those are 2 like slam dunk Kimari targets in that deck. You can get it back with the Yuna because she isn't restricted to forwards, so you can ditch it and potentially get it later. It's another 10 backup, so it's going to be giving your Waka counters too when it comes down. So if you have Waka will be, I think, the first forward where you actually feasibly put 2 different counters on him. So he'll have a Ronzo counter being protected by Kimari, and he'll also have his real counters. So you have to have 2 dice on your card for that one, and make sure you keep track of which one is which. We finally got in there, right? That looks fun. Also, just as a generically good, just like a normal card, not related to Guardians at all. I think it'll be really nice to have access to Kimari in various decks. So one very, very obvious combo that I think basically everybody has thought of is you can use Marsh to search Kamari and then immediately protect the Marsh with Kamari effect, so he can start drawing cards with his ability later. So that works. It'll obviously be very annoying if I don't know how they would slot it into the deck, but if Sky Pirates had this, can you imagine just like a Pinello that can't take damage? That would be like, yeah, sounds awful, right? Yeah, stuff like that. I think it's just generically good for, Palamporum. You can stop them from taking damage. Like any of these 2-drops that are just going to continue generating value, it's very easy to just drop one of them turn 1 because they already want to be dropped turn 1. And the primary counterplay to them being dropped turn 1 is, Brynhilder, Vivi, Ace, these kinds of cards. But if you are playing the Kamari with it turn 1, it kind of erases a lot of that. So it makes them a lot easier to play. I personally plan on giving that Ronzo counter to Agrius and just killing my opponent. So that seems like a good way to use it. But yeah, I am pretty high on this card. Obviously, you can't play like 3 of it, or it is at least kind of difficult to. I would expect most decks that play it, you just kind of play it as a potential upside, high roll start for like a turn 1 at 1 copy or 2 copies maybe. But yeah, he seems a lot better than most generic backups that we have access to.
Yeah. Well, and in particular, it's worth noting that it actually says each forward with a Ronso counter. So I suppose if you have some way to bounce him and replay him and you can like load your board up, you can give him all protection, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, you can Althea it back to your hand and then play more. Yeah.
Next we have Kyrie, which you mentioned, which the more I look at this card, the more I look at this card, the more I'm just like, wow, what a just good generic 2-cost backup that's an EX burst too for some reason. The reveal of their hand is kind of like, that's just fine. It never hurts to have information, but I just like the scry, especially early. I like the idea of turn 1. Let's say it's your only backup in hand. I really need to find another one. Is it in these 2? No. Okay, put it in the next one. Okay, good. There it is. I'll keep that one on top. So yeah, for 2 costs, like this is this kind of like, I don't know. It's a 2 cost. It's a burst. It does everything you would want it to do, and then they'll make these other cards are like, well, no, it's a 4 cost, and you got to like work your ass off to draw a card from it. And yeah, this card just seems good.
Yeah, I'm mostly on the same page here. I love that it's a burst. Just being able to like look at your opponent's hand on a burst just seems like pretty potent. I think it works really well with like Rosa. And we'll get to it in a bit. There's the new Sarah Mobius, which reveals cards from the top of your deck. Like all of these reveal the top card if it fits a condition at the card at hand. It makes them, a breeze. And it's also good at, stacking your EX burst, fixing your curve. I really like these cards in general, and it's nice that they're finally making them, like generic 2CP card that does a good thing instead of, like, well, you have to tap it and pay 1 to do this thing. This shouldn't be part of the game. Come on. Yeah.
All right, then we have Clavat. He's our standard unit, damage 5, return to hand 1. And then we have Genbu. He's our mighty turtle for the Shijin. Then we have Corsair, which basically makes me think of Opus 2 Mirror Web without the EX burst, but in addition, it gets it's an action ability that you can break it later to draw a card. I don't know. I only see her so often, so I don't know if this will be any good, but.
No burst, no bueno.
Yep, no burst, no bueno. Well, you need to get that on a tag. Then we have Sahagin. He's the scry version of water. I think he's just kind of there. And then we have White Mage, which is a forward, which is clearly meant as an anti-discard card, only in water. I don't know. It's so specific. Again, this is one of those cards, if you could ever have a side deck in the game, and then you realize, I'm going against an ice player, and you can slot it in. But yeah, I can't imagine you being like, well, just in case someone has ice, I'm going to get this guy ready.
Well, I think this card is deceptively good.
Do tell.
Now, the reason that I think so is, like, yes, you can. It also just kind of like blows out like discard. You have a Skeletoad. Well, fuck your Skeletoad. Yeah. I have a White Mage. It's like, and so there's a few things that this card has going for it. I want to tackle them in order. So the first one is that it doesn't say once per turn. So every time your opponent makes you discard, you get to draw a card. It also doesn't say you can only control like 1 White Mage or whatever. This only activates once per time you discard. So if you have 2 White Mages, you get to draw 2. The next thing is that while it's true that it only activates on your opponent's turn, this does activate when you cast Moogle or Poo-Poo. So when those cards say discard, and that's according to a card effect. So when you cantrip and draw 2, discard 1, or discard 1 and then draw 2, you do get to draw an extra card off of that with this. So those also stack with the however many white mages you have. So I think it's actually deceptively good. This particular white mage card. Now, do I think it's good enough to like just generically splash into water decks or whatever? Well, probably not. Especially because a lot of the decks that are cantripping with those Poo-Poo and Moogle cards, they kind of want to do it on their turn so they get to use Mog 6. However, if you're already playing those cards, if you're potentially playing Marsh, because this is an FFTA card again, this could potentially get the Marsh online a little bit faster. You can start drawing 1, drawing 2 with the Marsh effect. It is a lot better than the pack fodder that I thought it was on first glance. There's a lot of like small like niche scenarios where actually you did discard due to a card effect. Also it works with all the waltzes because they discard for effects. So yeah, you can you can trigger it on that too. So yeah, I think there's actually a lot of ways to make this card work where it kind of feels like, wait, that wasn't how we intended it for it to work, but it actually does in those situations. And yeah, it will obviously, if ice discard gets really out of hand, this will obviously hose them.
Yeah. Wow, really good points there. Next, we have Sarah Mobius, who I wasn't super high when I first read it. She's obviously a good crystal generator, but rereading her now, I kind of like that. So she'll come in, you'll get a crystal, which means you immediately get to reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a backup, you get to add to your hand. And at first, I guess I just assumed it like went to the break zone, but no, you actually get the choice of either keeping it on top or putting it on the bottom, which is really cool because if it's a card you want, now you either just need to draw into it naturally or use a draw effect and, okay, I'm going to get that. Or if it's like, yeah, I don't want that card, let me put it on the bottom. So that anytime you're given choices like that, more options, that's just pure benefit for you. And then again, if you put this in Warriors of Light or just something that generates a lot of crystals with Elena, that's just all the more information you're getting to keep checking your deck. So I do find her crystal spend effect a little underwhelming just because it's only 1,000 power and she's 7k as is, but maybe that'll be deceptively more useful than it looks at first glance.
Yeah, I think that this is one of the better water cards in the set, maybe even the best. It's really powerful. So a few things about this card that I really like. So I mentioned ice water crystals several times throughout the review. I think it's a slam dunk in there, not only because so when you gain a crystal, you reveal the top card. If it's a backup, so if it's a backup, you drew it. If not, there is this Opus 15 ice crystal user called Setzer. So let's say you flip the top card and it's a forward and you're like, oh, I didn't get to draw a card with my Sarah Mobius, but now I'll just play Setzer and Sarah Mobius gave me the crystal, so now I get to play it to the field for free. So I think these cards work really, really well together. The other things, it just works so well with the other crystal gainers in water, particularly Gao. You know, if you play Gao and you get a crystal, if you say that a crystal is eventually going to be 2 CP, then Gao was a 0 CP 5k. So if you reveal the top card with Sarah Mobius out on the field, you got a crystal, and then you reveal a backup and you add the backup to your hand, then Gao was like a minus 2 CP 5k. And then when you hit the damage threshold, he'll be 8k, obviously, right? And this just kind of all compounds on like how many crystals you're getting. So it's like, let's say you're getting that, you know, every time you attack with Agris, you're getting that every time you play one of your crystal backups, you're getting that effect every time you play Gao. It kind of feels like it's going to spiral out of control very quickly, and the longer you can keep this on the field, the more of those effects you're going to get. And that's why I really like that they gave her a protection ability on her crystal usage. Like, yes, it's only 1k, you know, yeah, I don't really want to spend my crystals on this when I could be spending them online or whatever. However, keeping the Sarah Mobius on the field is going to very quickly spiral out of control for advantage if you even get like 1 or 2 triggers off, or you're, you know, combining it with Setzer and stuff like that.
Great.
So I really like this card. I expect to see a lot of it. The other big thing, sorry, I forgot to mention one thing. There's the Warrior of Light loop that exists. There's infinite loops with Warrior of Light with Bards gaining a bunch of crystals, and then you use the Light Lena to like do a bunch of bounces and stuff like that. I won't go into detail about how that loop works. There's a nice article by Petit Yan that you can Google Translate. But this fits in there because Bart's gives you a crystal every time you perform the loop, and then Ceramobius will flip a card every time you gain the crystal. So basically, just by performing the loop that you were already going to do anyways, you get to add a bunch of cards from your deck's hand.
Wow.
to draw a bunch of cards. So there's infinite loop stuff going on with that card. There's a bunch of like value going on with the crystal cards. I think the only potential like downside that I really see to the card is that it's a 3 CP 7K that isn't guaranteed to get her value immediately. So it is a little slower. It's probably more of the top end of water ice crystals and stuff. But I am really sold on that card. I expect a lot from it.
Hey, you sold me on it. That was a great description. That's fantastic. The Setzer, man, I've always whiffed on that Setzer because it's just up to blind luck. So yeah, that would be cool to be able to, oh, that's what I'll hit. Well, don't mind if I do. Great comments,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Card I'm very excited about is our water legend, Tidus. 10's my personal favorite Final Fantasy. I've always really liked this character, and just what a cool card. First of all, I adore this artwork. Man, I would love to pull one of these in full art.
It looks great.
It looks fantastic. And he's just cool. So first of all, he's this threat of that he can't be blocked, so he's going to keep coming at you. And then if you dare choose him, he just gets to go like, all right, see ya, and he ducks back into your deck to then draw you 3 cards and knock one of yours out to the bottom of your deck. Like, good gravy. I think Matisky said it best when this was revealed. He was like, that's a lot of text for you can't be chosen by summons or abilities. Because he's got a point. It's like, you don't want to choose this thing. Like, in what world would you ever willingly choose this thing? Obviously susceptible still to like board wipes or Famfrit type effects, stuff that isn't going to target him directly. But man, what a cool card. Oh, I love this card so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like this card too. I think there's a lot of discourse around this card, which is like, well, it just says you can't choose it and you can't block it. So how good is that card really? And it's like, well, you have to play a water deck that, it tries to play this early, and then you deal damage to your opponent. Now, what kind of decks do that? Well, we don't really have a whole lot of those kinds of decks right now. That being said, I think Tidus is like the right specs and, just the kind of card that makes me want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, tiny earthquake there. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
We're good. Yeah, so I think that the Tidus has like all the right specs, and I want to play that kind of deck. So I expect it to be like, I'm playing Tidus, and I don't expect to get any value from the Tidus for maybe 4 or 5 turns. But then once my opponent gets to like 4 or 5 damage, they're like, well, I'm kind of sweating it. I kind of gotta block the Tidus, I can't block the Tidus, so I kind of have to do something about it eventually. And that's when, you're going to start compounding all of that. So you have to be playing a deck where you have enough cheap threats alongside Tidus that you can put the damage out. But as long as you're playing that kind of deck, I think Tidus is going to be really, really strong. And I think there's a lot of players who kind of plan on playing this as like the new Alua, the new Opus 12 Stola, where it's like the new damage threat is now Tidus. He says you can't choose him. No.
You like that? One of my favorite Tidus lines from the game. I'm so excited for him. So now we have our water monster, Tross, some more 10 love. And this one what was this? This is the anytime something bounces, you can draw a card. This, again, bounce is always kind of strange, but man, if you put this in with like Leviathan or Bismarck, things that benefit from seeing bouncing, that's like, oh my god, that's even more card draw. So, and again, he's just a 2 cost. Then, of course, he feeds into himself. I think he's a pretty cool little octopus. What do you think?
Yeah, I like this card. Every time I read it, it got a little bit worse in my mind, because first I thought it was like whenever you bounce a card, draw a card, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. Like that works with like everything, right? And then I read it again, and I was like, oh, it's only when you bounce your opponent's stuff. And then I read it again, and I was like, oh, it's only when you bounce your opponent's forwards. It's like, it's a little difficult. You kind of got to go a little harder into the bounce forwards than I really like, because, it's really nice to bounce your opponent's backups, because that's kind of like killing their backup a lot of the time. But for forwards, it's really not the same, because, forwards come in and they kind of do their thing when they come in, whereas backups, they have to stay on the field to do their thing. So it's a little worse than I thought it was the first couple of times I read it. But I still think it is good. It's probably one of the middle of the 2CP monster pack. If you're playing a lot of those effects, this card seems like, totally great. I would expect to see a lot of it in those kind of like mono water bounce tempo style kind of things. It's a little awkward that it doesn't work with all of the new return to the top of the deck, return to the bottom of the deck stuff. We have a couple of those coming up, and we've seen a couple of those already. But it's a little weird that it doesn't work with those because like they seem like strict upgrades compared to bounce. So yeah, there's some conflicting stuff there, but it does look pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah. All right, here we have Fiona. She's just going to draw a card in entry, which is nice, and on an EX burst. And then, interesting, she has protection effect, so when she's chosen, she can go to the top of your deck. And at first, I was really high on this because I was like, that's always so cool. But I think Steve D pointed this out on like one of his videos, was that he kind of wonders if that's actually a bad thing, because he's like, do you really want to keep putting this on top of your deck, meaning you're going to draw it constantly? And, you know, surely your opponent isn't going to, if you put it on top of your deck, be like, well, I'll just walk into your burst to let you draw a card. So I don't know, like that kind of made me rethink it and just like, like how good is this card really? What do you think of Fiona?
I think this card, it has a really cool effect, and it's really well lined up. The problem is just like the numbers on the card don't really work the way you would want them to. Like if this was a 2CP or like a 3CP 7K or a 2CP 5K, it would be fantastic. Maybe 2CP is a little too good because it draws a card. So maybe like a 3CP 7K, I think this card would be a lot better than a 4CP 8K, because you're kind of just like losing the 2CP value every time you do that.
Yeah.
Putting it on top of your own deck, I think, yeah, it's very good because your opponent doesn't want to attack. And then but I think you also have to compound it with effects that deal yourself damage. Because I think you're totally right. You don't want to draw this card after you put it on top of your deck. That just seems really, really bad. So I think if you're going to play this, then I would play it with, you know, like the new Cactar that we talked about in Earth or whatever that damages yourself. So it gets chosen, then your opponent says, okay, I'm not going to attack you, and they go into main phase 2, and then you play your Cactar, and then you damage yourself, and you get it anyways. That seems like the best play pattern to kind of make this card work, but I'm not sold on the stats that are attached to the card to really make it shine.
Yeah, the 4 cost definitely really warps how I think about that. So I don't know if anyone knew this. Fusoya is actually a hero in Final Fantasy IV, but you wouldn't know it looking at this card art. He looks awfully angry here. Still, very unique art, which I like. And here's another one of those multi-element payoffs, is that if you're willing to invest a bunch of different elements into this, you get these Fusoya effects. It's interesting they purposely stacked it that you got to go top to bottom. So if you want what you could argue is maybe the strongest effect of, again, putting a forward back on top of its owner's deck, that you got to work for it. So kind of similar with all this multi-element stuff. I kind of struggle to evaluate this because I'm just not sure what type of deck it goes into. However, no denying that if you got all 4 of these effects when he comes in, that feels damn good. If you get just the first one, then I guess he's a 3-cost 8K. Maybe that's not too bad either. Obviously, he's a perfect target for Amaterasu, but what do you think of Fusoya?
The card potential here is really great. However, I do agree it seems very, very difficult to get all of the effects. I think they were very careful about balancing this card. They're like, okay, definitely we can't let them choose whichever ones they want. Definitely, we can't let them include water as part of this cost, because that would already just be really like a 1CP 8K that recycles 1 and draws a card. That would already just be really good. So I don't know. I really need to see somebody else make this card work before I'm sold on it. I don't think it's good enough to really push like a water versatile deck, which we've never really had before. I don't think it's quite good enough to like make its own deck out of it, if that makes sense. Although bouncing your opponent's backups is really good. It's just like too hard to guarantee that you're going to pay all of the costs with your backups to get all of the different CP that you need out there. That being said, if there's a way to cast this card without paying water CP in the first place, like you steal it off of Zidane or something, that seems really good. Because then you just automatically get like 1 to 2 of these effects.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So this next card, I had to tease my buddy Steve. Well, I happen to have a lot of friends named Steve, but 2 is, like you said, with 3, 2 is the very first Final Fantasy he played, so he has a real attachment to Firion, and he always says, but he never gets any good cards. He always gets crap cards. And so when I saw this, I sent it to him, and I said, look, even Firion's disappointed about the card he got. Like, this pose had to be intentional.
Yeah.
He just looks so despondent, like, oh, even I'm sad by this card. Like, I don't know, maybe if you want to play this in some world where you like play a Hecaton Kyre deck and you force him to deal damage, but no one's going to block this. Like, and that's all he does, and he's so expensive. Like, poor guy.
Yeah, I was thinking about like, okay, maybe this card is good in limited, and that was kind of where I stopped thinking about it.
Yep, fair enough. Vesvia from the Soiree members, move past that to March, who you mentioned earlier. Wow, this card seems super strong. The other March, of course, was great for the March Ritz and Opus 11, but this is a card you wouldn't mind slamming down turn 1, like you said. You could get Kamari, you could get any other backup you enjoy. It's even a character, so if you really want to go aggro, you could slap another FFTA card. Like, just seems really good. This almost seems like a card to help, at least how I'm viewing it, to like help you with bad mulligans that, oh no, I didn't get any backups. Oh, okay, well, at least I can put out March turn 1 and then I'll go get my backup and then go from there kind of thing. So especially really potent if there's ever a very specific card you want to see. You know, I want to see this backup Moogle because then I'm color fixed for the rest of the game, or I want to see this thing because it does yada, yada, yada. Like, card just seems solid. Then, man, if you can never get those attacks going, like, whoo.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on the same page. This card is awesome. I think this card is really good for FFTA. Like, I imagine we're going to see a lot of people try, myself included, Wind Water FFTA, because this card searches your FFTA backup, so it gets you kind of set up for putting his own effect online. But it also searches Shara, which there was no way to search before.
Yeah.
So you can use Azul to search this out and then play it and then get another 2 CP backup with that effect. And then his effect is just immediately online next turn. And there's like 3 ways to search him. You can use Mont Blanc, which is the fire. So if you're playing Wind Water, obviously that's not on the table. But there's also, you know, the Ezal, like I said, and Doned. It was a card that seems like another obvious choice for that deck. Search out the Marsh immediately, get the Marsh rolling. And yeah, it seems like, as crazy as it is, you don't actually have to play Ritz to start winning the game. You can be winning the game long before you draw Ritz, which was like the whole thing about FFTA before now. So there's that. Obviously, as its own standalone card, it's not nearly as powerful because you're not going to be getting any attack triggers. However, like you said, you have that one card that you just like really need to see, like very important. Well, this card gets this gives you that card. It's just really, really good at that. And I expect to see a lot of decks that rely on Marsh as like a linchpin piece going forward. The only reason that I could see this card not seeing a lot of play is like, well, 6 is just too expensive, you know?
Yeah.
And if that ends up being the case, then yeah, I kind of understand there could be some decks that maybe don't end up playing Marsh even though they really need a certain card just because it's too expensive, just because it's Amaterasu fodder.
Yeah.
And that could be a potential downside of it, but it just looks so versatile that I have a hard time thinking that we just like don't see it at all over the course of
I'd be very surprised if this just didn't show up at all. Now this next one, curious. This is Maya. So thank God this has haste on it, because if this had to just sit there a turn and do nothing, they've really leaned into this can attack and block status too. A lot of cards are doing this. However, again, clearly this fits in a summon deck. It's water, so do you run this with the Seymour? This seems like maybe a prime candidate for maybe the mill type deck, but then again, the only thing is, in a lot of those summon decks, you really want to reuse the summons a lot, whereas this one immediately removes it after it does it. But if you're getting them for super cheap, maybe that's really worth it. This is another one I kind of have a hard time evaluating. Like, I could see it being just crazy. Oh my gosh, this card's so absurd. But I can also see like, you know, you got to line stuff up really well, and it got to put a lot of work into it. So what do you think of Maya?
Yeah, I think this card is particularly going to be really good in the Earth, Water, Rydia deck, the one that runs all the cantrips and stuff like that. I think it's another case of like, yeah, it removes from play the summon, so you don't get to recycle it, you don't get to Motri it or whatever, but like, you got the cast Amaterasu for 1 CP off color. So like that's really, really good, right? And she's got a nice, 1 CP 7k stat line. You're not attacking with her, you're not blocking with her, but that's a pretty difficult to kill stat line, and it's raising your Sophie's power by 2k, and that's just good. The big point that I have here with this one is that it's Sildra searchable. So whereas Rydia kind of takes a few steps to get Sildra online, there's basically no 1 CP water forwards or backups for that matter that you're ever playing in any Sildra deck, and this is just like a guaranteed like one-offs card that you can search. I don't know if this is like a 3 copy card in that deck or in any deck that it's in particular. It kind of seems like one of those cards where like your primary strategy is to play things for free with Rydia, but in a pinch, like Maya is a 1 CP card that lets you play cards for 1, and you can kind of play Rydia and Maya and kind of do 2 casts on each turn instead of just 1. So it's one of those like having a strategy where you're having a lot of cards that do the same thing is really important, and so I think this card is going to be good in that sort of deck.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. Next we have Yuna. This is a 3-cost 7k card. Now, I don't know if she's been to the stylist lately. Her hair looks like a different color. Her facial structure looks a little different, but she's wearing Yuna's outfit, so it's got to be Yuna, right? No, this is Lightning. It was actually kind of surprised that this is the only Lightning we got with 13 on the cover of the set. I actually thought we got not very many 13 cards at all. That very much surprised me. But as far as this card goes, the special is fantastic, especially for just 1. And it's got this situation where they released a set of cards like these in Opus 9, and a lot of cards had these effect of if your opponent controls more than you do. And my one issue with those cards, the part that always got me hung up was that if the forward, so like if they have 2 forwards and you have 1, if you put in Lightning, well, now you have the equal number, so it doesn't trigger. So you really have to be behind to use it. However, straight removal from the game is fantastic. And then the idea that for a single card in hand, oh, you're going to kill her? Surprise, not only is she gone, I'm now going to kill whatever, you have when she comes back in. So, cool card. I don't know if you build around it. Would certainly be interesting in Title. Just do mono Lightning decks and just schematic change, which I do like. Is that, I think it's kind of weird that she's wearing Yuna's outfit. I get it was in the game DLC or whatever, but it is thematic to 13-3 with that was what she would do, is she would switch her schematas to the different costumes. So I think this card's kind of fun.
All right, I have several issues with this card. Not from the power. I think the card is really good. Mechanically speaking, it's fantastic. Probably the best Lightning we've ever got in the game. But my problem with the card is that her S ability is style change, or schemata change, right? Style change in Japanese. But she doesn't do the style change. You play the same card back, so she's not changing styles at all. What is up with that, right? That's what I think that's my biggest issue with the card. However, I mostly agree with what you have to say. The remove from game, conditional, albeit removed from game with no cost restriction, no anything like that. That is incredibly strong, and I think as a standalone card, this is just a really, really great card. Now, what I really like about this restriction of if your opponent controls more forwards than you is well, I'm not going to have to worry about my Tenzin turn 1 just getting Lightning. There's more conditions than that. However, it is true that we need better defensive options in the game. A lot of the removal that exists in the game, like Cyan, Brynhildr, and these Amaterasu and stuff like that, they're much better for aggressive decks than they are for defensive decks. Despite the defensive decks still want to play these, but they're better because they kind of compound advantage that you already have. And having powerful removal options that only work when your opponent is the aggressor and you're the defender is really important to have in the game. And I think the biggest examples of that are these really clunky and expensive cards like Famfrit, the big one and the small one, Hecaton Chair. These are really powerful cards, but they're really expensive, and they're really always attached. They're not attached to forwards for the most part, And so because of that, having these nice, cards like Lightning that only work when your opponent is the one coming to you, but are really powerful, put a body on the board, remove something from the game. It's nice to have these, and I think this is a great, well-designed example of one of those cards.
Well said. My buddy Steven would fully agree with you. He was lamenting that he didn't feel like there was a whole lot of good like control-oriented or defensive cards. So I'm really glad you made that point. Next, we have Leviathan. He's our water summon to these. I actually didn't realize this could put it at the top or bottom of the owner's deck. That's a lot stronger than I thought it was. And then, obviously, if you get the multi-element, you get to draw into a discard. But you are restricted to 5 or less. So I'm not sure how to feel about this card, especially since I just read it correctly. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I look forward to casting it for free off of Rydia or for 1 off of Maya. But yeah, it's not immediately clear whether this card is great or just fine, or like somewhere in between those, like kind of like a good card, but one that you kind of have to cheat out to really be good. But yeah, like I said, casting it off of Rydia for free seems kind of hard to go wrong, and I expect to be doing some of that.
Awesome. Well, if you like casting things for free, you must love this next card because it's our last water card of the set, and it lets you cast one for free, albeit if you're willing to jump through a few hoops and then file out your tax forms and then go ahead and get a license for those tax forms and then travel to the top of Mount Everest, and then maybe we'll let you throw a card out there. Like, I get the design of Leo. I understand what they're thinking is that if you've met his conditions, you've got him all set up, you can tap a single backup, put this body into play who's above curve or on curve or whatever, and then you get a choice of anything you want to do for free. So I can understand that's incredibly powerful. However, those conditions are very difficult to achieve. You can't cheat him in. He doesn't count himself, so I mean, are you going to sit there and like strategically, okay, I got to draw this backup. Well, I can't play this because this isn't the right cost. Man, I don't know. And then even then, like, what if this card said you can search your deck for anything you want and then cast it that turn? Would that still be worth going through these hoops? Because this is still a reveal effect, and Lord knows my luck with a reveal effect. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to, what do I draw? Cool. 3 crap summons and 2 backups. Scoop phase. Like, I don't know. I just don't see this guy working.
Yeah, this is more of one of those like dream, like, oh yeah, I want to make a Leo deck just because I want to play Leo kind of things. I don't think this is a top tier competitive card. However, I have kind of put together like a Mod Podge skeleton of what a Leo deck might look like, and I think it's actually a little more realistic than I had expected it to be. So, first of all, I think you have to play a lot of cards that kind of like fix the costs for Leo. So like they are oddly costed cards that search for even costed cards and stuff like that. So the big ones that I'm thinking of are like Star Sybil puts a 5 on the field and searches Apudu, which is a 6. Minfilia is obviously just good in that slot. Also, Realm is a 5-drop that will put a 1 and a 2-drop on the board. So that kind of fixes a lot of the difficult stuff. And then Tyro will search for, like whatever you randomly need. Sarah is a good backup searcher that searches for Princess Sarah, so it's a 4 that'll always search for a 1. And then Marsh, which we just finished talking about, is a 6 that will always search for a 2. So I do think it is a little more realistic than I had immediately thought once I tried to, put my brain to the test and do it. The big problem with it is that like once you put all of these cards that kind of like fix your costs so that you can actually play Leo, you don't have a lot of slots to actually like put payoffs into the deck for like when you play the Leo to the field. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to have like all these cards that make Leo castable, and then once you cast it, your only payoffs are just like, well, I can get a new Marsh, or I can get like a Puma and then get more cards back. Or sometimes if I get really lucky, I can maybe have like my 1 of 3 Primal Leviathan in the top 5. Right. So that, like I said, it's more of like one of those like janky against the odds decks than a top tier competitive thing. But it does seem very fun to play.
That's awesome. I love that you put that much thought into it, man. And I hope I do get to see it, at least someone pull something awesome off of it. Yeah. Well, folks, that is all of water. That's the main 6 elements. So we are done for part 2. We just got 1 more to go. We got a few light and dark cards to talk about and mention that 10 starter set. So as always, leave any questions or comments you got in the video description below and let me know what your favorite cards are. We'll see you in part 3. Till then, take care.